I knew when the company was going to collapse. It was not when the stock dipped or when the break room vending machine leaked dark fluid that smelled of burnt plastic. It was a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, under the humming lights of the finance department. My name is Brian, and I am 55 years old. For 10 years, I have been the backbone of this organization. You know how in every disaster movie there is a metal pillar holding up the falling building? That is my role. As the senior financial reporting analyst, I correct everyone else's arithmetic. The problem with quietly fixing everything is that people start to think nothing was ever broken. They believe the quarterly reports just appear out of nowhere, clean and compliant, like magic. In our company, the upper management never realized that a successful report requires hours of validation. They do not see me at 8 in the evening on a Friday reorganizing the spreadsheet tables, because the department head thinks typing numbers directly into a cell counts as database design. They do not see the custom database scripts I wrote 5 years ago, scripts that keep our whole invoicing system running with digital glue. So, when the vice president of finance walked in that Tuesday, looking like he had won the lottery, I knew trouble was coming. Behind him was a younger version of him, wearing a suit that cost more than my used sedan, with hair so gelled it looked solid. The vice president, Lawrence, clapped his hands together. The sound bounced off the gray cubicle walls. He called for everyone to pay attention. The data entry clerks, the junior analysts, and the people who had spent decades looking at screen grids all looked up. Lawrence introduced Travis, his son. Travis was fresh out of grad school with an MBA, and he was the new director of strategic planning. Lawrence said Travis had fresh perspective. Travis stepped forward with the confidence of someone who has never seen a debt he could not pay. He looked around the room, his eyes moving over us like we were office chairs. Then he stopped right in front of my desk. Before I explain how I handled this young man, do me a favor and subscribe. It costs nothing, and it helps the channel. Travis smiled. It was a cold look. He asked if I was Brian. I told him I was, keeping my voice very quiet. I was currently in the middle of a spreadsheet nightmare, trying to fix the marketing budget because the director there did not know how to count. Travis walked over, picked up a stack of my files, which contained my detailed reconciliation logs, and flipped through them carelessly. He chuckled, a wet, patronizing sound. He said his father had told him about me, but looking at these systems, they seemed very archaic. The room went silent, the typing stopped, even the air conditioning seemed to die. I slowly took my hands off my keyboard. I asked him what he meant by archaic. Travis tossed the papers back onto my desk. They slipped off the wood and scattered across the carpet. He did not pick them up. He told the room that he had been looking at the structure, and his honest opinion was that I did not contribute anything real. He said I was just maintaining old workflows. He claimed the company needed innovators, not caretakers. He grinned, looking for approval. A couple of the young interns, wanting to please the vice president, let out nervous laughs. I looked at the papers on the floor. Those files had saved the company millions of dollars in federal compliance penalties over the years. I looked at the tired faces of my team. Then I looked at Travis. He was waiting for me to apologize or beg for my job. He thought I was just a worried analyst close to retirement who would do anything to keep his pension. But something inside me snapped. It was not a loud noise, but a quiet realization. The anger was not hot, it was cold. I stood up, straightened my collar, and looked him in the eye. I told him he was right. If the management believed I did not contribute anything, then I must have been wrong about my work here. Travis looked surprised. Then I smiled. I told him that the free work stops today. Travis blinked, confused. I sat back down, turned my chair away from him, and opened a solitaire game. I told him I was just a caretaker and did not want to block his innovation. Lawrence, who was watching from the door, frowned. He felt something had changed, but he was too proud to ask. Travis tried to look tough, calling for everyone to get back to work and demanding an audit by noon. He walked off to his office and Lawrence followed. 5 minutes later, the assistant to the board chair called. She was looking for the early quarterly numbers. Usually, I send a clean file that I build by hand because the automated system has been broken for years. I looked at the file on my screen. It was complete and correct. It fixed errors from 3 departments. I right-clicked the file and moved it to a private folder. I told the assistant that the new director of strategic planning had informed me I do not contribute to that work, so she would have to ask Travis. I hung up the phone and took a sip of my water. The clock showed 15 minutes past 9. The battle had started, and they did not even know it. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over an office when you stop doing the things you are not paid to do. It is like the quiet before a major storm. For the rest of that week, I became the ghost they claimed I was. I arrived at exactly 8:30. I took my full legally mandated 1-hour lunch break away from my desk, something I had not done in years, and at 5 o'clock on the dot, I packed my bag and walked out the door. The first crack in our fragile system appeared on Wednesday afternoon. I was calmly formatting the font size on a routine memo when Eric from the sales department walked up. Eric is a nice guy, but he thinks spreadsheets are a video game. He asked if I could help with the Midwest Commission dashboard, which was showing a spinning red circle error. In the past, I would have logged into the back end and cleared the cache in the server that gets clogged every time Eric uploads a file with formatting errors. I could have fixed it in 3 minutes. Instead, I gave him my best customer service smile and told him Travis was handling all strategic processes now, and as a caretaker, I did not want to interfere. I wanted him to see that without the caretaker, the tools he relied on would quickly fail. Eric blinked, confused. He said that Travis did not know how to clear the cache. I told him cheerfully that I was sure Travis would figure it out since he had an MBA. Eric stared at me for a long moment, seeing the absolute lack of concern in my eyes. He nodded slowly, backed away, and walked toward the office of the Director of Strategic Planning. 10 minutes later, I heard the voice of the Vice President's son shouting through the wall. He was yelling about rebooting it, asking why everyone was so incompetent. I took a slow sip of my tea. By Thursday, the cracks in the foundation were widening. The finance dashboard, a complicated network of code I had built over 5 years, relied on a daily manual patch I ran every morning at 15 minutes before 9. It was a simple script, just a few lines of code that told the database to ignore the fact that the inventory system and the billing system were speaking 2 different languages. I did not run that script on Thursday. At 10 o'clock, the accounts payable director, a woman named Helena, who communicated almost exclusively in bold red text, stormed out of her office. She demanded to know why the vendor payments were showing up as 0. She shouted that the system claimed we owed Westinghouse Electric $0 when we actually owed them $5,200,000. The office fell quiet, heads peeking over cubicle walls like wild animals sensing danger. Travis came out of his office, holding a tablet that was clearly not connected to the network. He announced it was just a glitch and that IT was working on it. He claimed it was a server speed issue. I kept typing my shopping list. Travis marched over to my desk, smelling of expensive cologne and anxiety. He asked if I knew why the accounts payable module was down. I stopped typing and looked at him over the rim of my glasses. I told him I assumed it was because the legacy patch was not applied, but since my workflows were archaic, I assumed he had implemented a modern solution. Travis looked like he wanted to scream. If he admitted he needed me to run a script he did not understand, he would look like a fool. He muttered that we were migrating to the cloud anyway, and that this was just a minor problem. He stormed off toward the server room. A few minutes later, the IT administrator, Sean, walked out shaking his head. Sean caught my eye and gave me a tiny nod. He was not going to tell Travis about the Python script either. He understood the game we were playing and was happy to watch. Friday was the final deadline for the early board deck. Usually I spend Thursday night correcting calculations because department heads confuse budget with forecast. This Friday, I was completely calm. I had done exactly what was asked of me. I entered my data, and only my data. I did not check other tabs or correct formulas. At 3 in the afternoon, Travis emailed the department, writing that he had compiled the report and sent it to the board. The subject line was Q3 report finalized. I opened the spreadsheet and it was a complete disaster. The cash flow tab was referencing a cell that did not exist. The profit calculation was double counting tax credits because someone had typed a positive number where a negative one belonged. And the executive summary was a blank gray box. I stared at the screen. It was like watching a train wreck. I could have fixed it in 10 minutes, but instead, I closed the document, saved it, and left the office at 2 minutes before 5. As I walked to the elevator, I saw Travis in his glass office, laughing on his phone. He had no idea the floor was about to give way. Monday morning arrived with the force of a sledgehammer. The weekend had passed in a blur of relaxation that I had not experienced in years. I had actually gone to a local market and bought fresh jam, and I did not check my work email once. It felt strange, like I was doing something illegal. When I walked into the office, the air was thick with tension. The quiet from the previous week was gone, replaced by the frantic whispering of people who knew something was wrong, but did not know who was going to get blamed. The quarterly reports that Travis had sent out on Friday had loaded into the main system over the weekend, and now the screens were flashing red warnings. I sat at my desk and unlocked my computer. My inbox had 47 unread messages. That was unusually low for a busy Monday morning, which meant the managers who usually asked me for help were either trying to solve the problems themselves or were too afraid to ask for guidance. I opened the main screen. The revenue by region chart showed the East Coast bar towering into $6 trillion, while the West Coast was showing negative $800 million. Unless we had started paying customers to take our products, that was impossible. In the conference room, the door was open, and I could hear Travis shouting into his phone. He was saying it was just a display error and that the data was solid because he had checked it himself. I took a sip of my coffee. It was burnt, but today it tasted wonderful. I whispered to my screen that highlighting cells in yellow did not count as an audit. It was just coloring. My desk phone rang. It was Clara from Analytics. "Clara is smart and very tired of the company," she whispered, asking if I was seeing this. I kept my voice normal and told her I was just focused on my own tasks today. Clara hissed that the cost of goods sold calculation was dividing by 0, and the entire manufacturing tab was filled with errors. I traced the formula on my screen and saw it was linking to a file on Travis's local desktop, a file none of us could access. I hid a smile. Travis had linked the main sheet to a spreadsheet on his own computer, thinking it would update for everyone else. It was the most basic mistake an analyst could make. I told Clara that sounded like a network permission issue and asked if she had submitted an IT ticket. Clara pleaded, saying I knew how to fix it and that it would only take 3 seconds to change the path to the shared drive. She said the operations director was standing right behind her desk. I felt a little guilty because Clara did not deserve this, but if I fixed it, Travis would take the credit and learn nothing. I told her I could not touch it because Travis was very specific about his new workflow, and I did not want to ruin his proprietary model. Clara understood. She hung up, saying she would tell operations they were waiting on Travis's local file. By noon, the trouble had reached the executive floor. Lawrence, the vice president, came running down the stairs. He looked red and angry. He walked straight into his son's office. Through the glass we could see them arguing. Travis was gesturing wildly at his laptop, and Lawrence was pointing at the screen. Then they both looked at me. I did not look back. I was busy organizing my screen icons. Lawrence came out, followed by Travis, and they walked over to my desks. Lawrence said they had a small technical issue and that the dashboard was not pulling the manufacturing data. I told him that was terrible. Lawrence said Travis believed the old system I built was conflicting with the new data. He asked me to take a look and fix it. This was the moment they expected me to yield, to say I would handle it, so they could go back to ignoring me. But I remembered how Travis had dismissed my work. I told them I would love to help, but I did not have admin access to Travis's laptop. I explained that if the data was hosted locally on his machine, my system could not reach it because of the security rules Lawrence had approved last year. Lawrence looked confused. He never read the security rules. Travis asked if I could just bypass it. I told him I was an analyst, not a software hacker, and that he would have to move the file, change permissions, and run the script, but if the headers did not match, it would corrupt the database permanently. That last part was a stretch, but it sounded terrifying. Travis turned pale. Lawrence told his son to figure it out because investors were checking the numbers the next day. They walked away, and I saw Travis searching the internet for help. Desperation was setting in. He was running out of options, By Tuesday afternoon, Travis realized he was in over his head. The system was too complicated for him because he did not understand the data structure. He did not know which columns were active and which were dummy files. He did not know about the hidden sheets that calculated tax variances. So, he decided to use force. At 1 o'clock, he clapped his hands again and told everyone to stop what they were doing. He claimed the system was down because of legacy issues, so we were going to rebuild the quarterly report manually from raw invoices. He called it hard work and told the juniors to show the board what they could accomplish. A collective groan went through the room. Rebuilding the report by hand from thousands of invoices was madness. He assigned revenue to one analyst, expenses to another, and payroll to a third. He did not give me anything to do. I watched as the juniors frantically typed numbers into blank sheets, making errors and correcting them. But manual entry has no safety checks. The system I built had rules that would turn a cell red if an entry violated federal compliance laws. These analysts were just typing raw figures. I saw one analyst typing in the vice president's discretionary expenses. It contained dinners that were personal but marked as client development. My system would have flagged them, but the analyst just entered them. There was one dinner for $4,500 and another for $2,000 at a golf club. The bullpen was in complete chaos. Junior analysts were running back and forth to the printer, carrying stacks of paper invoices. They were shouting about tax rates, vendor codes, and shipping dates, trying to figure out which invoices belonged to which quarter. My old automated database had built-in checks that verified whether a vendor existed in our master list before allowing any payment entry. Now, they were just typing names off paper. If they misspelled a vendor name, it would create a duplicate profile, making it look like we were paying new companies. I sat quietly at my desk, watching the disaster unfold. Kevin, one of the newer hires, looked like he was on the verge of tears. He had a stack of 300 shipping receipts that he had to match with sales contracts by the end of the day. He looked at me with pleading eyes, but I simply shook my head and pointed to Travis's office. Travis was walking around like a general, telling everyone they were doing great work. He did not understand they were creating a financial minefield. Travis was pacing, telling them to work faster. At 4:30, he gathered the sheets and pasted the values into a master file. But when you copy values without formulas, you lose the audit trail and the logic. At 5:15, Travis announced the report was done. He sent it directly to the board and the external auditors. I waited a minute, then checked the department inbox. I downloaded the file and saved a copy to my private drive, naming it non-compliant final submission evidence. When I opened it, I realized it was worse than I thought. It was not just bad math, it was illegal. Because they entered the data manually, they had skipped the revenue recognition rules. They had booked revenue for contracts that did not start until next quarter. This was clear deception. This premature booking was a direct violation of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, specifically Section 302, which governs corporate responsibility for financial reports. Under this federal statute, signing officers must certify that the report contains no untrue statement of a material fact and fairly presents the financial condition of the company. Furthermore, Title 18, Section 1350 of the United States Code imposes severe criminal penalties for signing off on non-compliant statements. If an officer certifies a report knowing it is inaccurate, they can face a fine of up to $1 million and 10 years in federal prison. If the violation is willful, the penalties increase to $5 million and 20 years. Travis, in his desperation to prove his value, had digitally signed the document, taking full personal liability for the fraud. He had bypassed our legal department entirely, ignoring the standard check procedures I spent years enforcing. The external auditors do not care about office politics, only accuracy and liability. On Wednesday morning, the email arrived from the senior audit partner at KPMG, a man named Gordon. The email went to Travis, Lawrence, and the CFO, and I was copied because I was the contact for historical data. Gordon wrote that they had flagged major irregularities in the Q3 submission. Specifically, $2,100,000 in projected revenue had been booked early as current assets, and executive discretionary expenses exceeded the limit by 550%. Gordon warned that if these figures were not corrected, they would file a formal disclosure regarding material weakness in internal controls. In our world, those words can suspend stock trading. 10 minutes later, Travis came to my desk holding the email. He looked panicked, demanding to know what was going on. I told him it was an audit flag. He asked why they were flagging revenue. I explained the revenue recognition principle, telling him my old system filtered those out based on service dates. Travis went pale and asked me to fix it, telling me to email Gordon and claim a clerical error. I looked at him and said I could not do that. I pointed out that his signature was on the cover page. He was trapped. He knew his career was in serious trouble. Travis was desperate. He ordered me to fix the numbers and handle the auditors, claiming it was my job as the senior analyst. But I was prepared. I opened a new email, addressed it to the auditor, and copied Travis, Lawrence, the CFO, and the general counsel, Diana. I wrote that I had been asked by Travis to address the issues, but unfortunately I did not prepare or review the file. I explained that I had been instructed that my workflows were archaic and that I should not contribute to the report. I stated that the file was built manually under Travis's direction and that I did not have access to the data, so I could not validate the numbers. I clicked send. The reaction was immediate. The general counsel ordered an immediate freeze on all financial documents and called a meeting in the boardroom. I watched through the glass as Lawrence yelled at his son. Then the CFO called my desk, asking me to come in. I grabbed my folder and walked in. Lawrence tried to be nice, claiming there was a misunderstanding and that they needed me to smooth things over. I looked at Travis and said it was a strange misunderstanding since he told the room I contributed nothing. The CFO asked if I could fix the file because the investors were calling the next day. I told him I did not have the manual data Travis used, but I could run my system, though it would take 48 hours to clear the backlog. The CFO said they did not have that much time. Travis accused me of sabotaging them on purpose. I turned to him, placed my screenshot of the file properties on the table, and showed that he was the author and had not even opened the compliance tab. The incompetence was clear. Deanna, the general counsel, looked at the papers. She said that if they presented these numbers, they were looking at an SEC investigation under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which holds officers personally liable. She asked me what the options were. I told her the only option was to let me do my job as the lead controller. I demanded full admin access, that Travis be removed from the system, and a written agreement that I was cleaning up their mess. The CFO agreed immediately and ordered Lawrence to give me access. I insisted on an email copy to HR. I went back to my desk, opened the correct file I had been maintaining privately, and worked until 3 in the morning. The next day, the investor call began at 10 o'clock. The lead investor, Mr. Pierce, who represented a private equity firm that owned 48% of the company, was on the screen. He noted that the new file looked very different from the one sent 2 days prior. Lawrence claimed they found a clerical error. Mr. Pierce stopped him, pointing out that the metadata showed the accurate report was authored by Brian, while the fraudulent one was authored by Travis. He asked why the director of strategy was producing errors, while a senior analyst was producing the correct figures. He demanded that I be brought into the room. I walked in, and Mr. Pierce asked me what happened. I explained that there was a decision to try a manual workflow led by Travis, and when it failed, I was asked to restore the data. Mr. Pierce looked at Lawrence and asked if he had sidelined his most competent analyst to let his son play with the numbers. He told me to walk him through the details. For the next hour, I ran the meeting, showing exactly where the errors and waste were. When the call ended, the room was silent. Lawrence looked defeated, and Travis looked sick. Diana told Lawrence that Travis had signed a fraudulent report and was a legal liability. She asked me what it would take to secure the department. I told them I wanted the title of controller, the matching salary retroactive to the start of the quarter, hiring authority in Travis's corner office. The CFO agreed on the spot. Travis packed his things that afternoon. His 3 months of work fit into a single box. Nobody said goodbye. Lawrence was forced into early retirement by the end of the month. I moved into the corner office, opened the window, and restored my database scripts. Across the floor, the system started working again. The sales dashboard cleared, and the accounts payable errors disappeared. I saw a file Travis had left on the computer, labeled Strategic Vision. I dragged it to the trash and emptied it. I leaned back with my cup of tea as the sun went down, casting warm orange light across the room. The company was stable again, not because of the loud innovators who did nothing, but because the structure was finally in the right hands. It was the result of a quiet man who knew his value and was willing to wait for the storm to clear.